The next question we want to understand, given that we've thought about the size of social media and its importance, is why do people contribute? Right? Why are people posting on social media? What incentives do we have, or like what kind of rationales might we have to write the content that we write on social media, or to behave the way we behave in more general in terms of contributions? And I'm going to focus on this paper by Olivier Tobia and Andrew Stephen, written in 2013, which says essentially, why do I want an audience on social media, right? So I'm writing because essentially I probably want people to be reading what I'm writing. And they posit that there's two possible reasons why we want to be posting. First is the idea of intrinsic utility. Right? So this is just inherent satisfaction of posting on social media. We just enjoy it. If intrinsic utility is what is driving our posting behavior on social media, they argue that if for some reason you get a whole bunch new followers, you're going to want to post more. So if there's some way that I can take a user and throw him more followers online somehow, if intrinsic utility is the driving force behind his contributions behavior on social media, he's going to post more. Why? Because he's going to be happy that he's broadcasting to more people, right? Because I now have more followers, more people reading my content. It's going to give me an incentive to post more if intrinsic utility is the main reason behind my contribution behavior. In contrast, an alternative reason why I might be posting online or contributing to social media more generally is an idea of image-related utility. So I'm posting because I'm motivated by other people's perceptions of me. And then they argue that if image-related utility is what matters and you're motivated by the perception of other people, if I can throw you a bunch of new followers kind of randomly, which is what this paper is going to try and do, then you get these new followers and you're either not going to change or probably you're going to decrease the amount of posts that you make online, the amount you contribute to social media. Their argument here is that having followers is enough, right? So you're happy, you're kind of gaining your happiness from your contributions because people are kind of positively judging you, and kind of you like the people kind of having those positive perceptions. So that if I give you more people, so you get more happiness, you don't need to attract new followers because I've just given them to you somehow. And then you don't need to post as often. So you're going to decrease your posting activity. So the question in this paper is really about, can I figure out whether it's intrinsic utility driving your posting behavior because you want to be broadcasting to more people, or is it an image idea where you post because you gain utility based on people following you and their positive kind of perceptions of you? How do we disentangle kind of those competing stories? Or, are they even competing? Well, they're competing because one says you'll do more, one says you'll probably do less contributions. But can we disentangle if certain people behave in different ways? They're going to run a field experiment on Twitter to try and tease out these two effects and which one might be dominating for who. The way they do this is they gain access to 2,500 people's accounts, right? So they just get the information about these 2,500 people. And the first thing they do is they watch their behavior for some time, right? So they take all these people, they watch them for almost 2 months to see if they're active. And their definition of active is that you've either contributed by putting more tweets out there. So you posted more tweets over those 52 days, or you followed more people. So essentially you're logging in and you're doing something on Twitter. Of those 2,500 people that they started with as their kind of base of their study, they find that 1,355 of these people are active. Now what the paper is gonna do is they're gonna take a bunch of these guys, a bunch of these 1,355 people, and they're gonna give them new friends, right? So new followers on Twitter. And then they're gonna see, for the people that they give these new followers, how does their behavior change? So what do they do? What do they do precisely? And then they're gonna compare, they're gonna give people some of these people, they're gonna give new followers, and they're gonna compare the behavior of these people that got new followers to the behavior of people that didn't get new followers. They're gonna look at the differences. So what they're gonna do is they find 100 people, they find 100 of these 1,355 accounts, and they call these people the treatment group. These are people that we're gonna do something to. And they give them 100 new followers each over a few days. What does that mean? It means that we're gonna randomly select 100 out of these 1,355 accounts, call them the treatment group, and I'm going to follow those 100 people with a bunch of synthetic, so fake, Twitter accounts. And I'm going to slowly increase the number of followers those 100 people have. So then I'm going to increase that follower count by 100. Now, in the paper, they argue that they make these these fake accounts that they're using to increase the followers of these people in the treatment group look realistic. So they really feel like that they're getting new followers, right? It's not like you're just getting followed by a blank account with like no posts, no picture, and a robot-y kind of username. So once we start adding friends to these people, we're going to keep watching. We're not going to, the authors are going to keep watching what happens. Essentially what they want to monitor is whether the posting intensity of these people in the treatment group who are getting these new followers is increasing or decreasing as these followers get added. And they're going to compare the change in posting intensity to the 1,255 people who didn't have anything, didn't have these extra friends kind of exogenously thrown on them by the researchers. They're going to watch, I think, for about 50 to 60 more days, and they're going to analyze the data and look at the differences. So they present two sets of findings. They present what they're going to call model-free evidence, and then they write down a model, which is like an economic model of utility and how people behave, to generate some other findings. I'm going to focus on the model-free evidence because I think it's clear enough what they find just from looking at this. And it means we don't have to worry about the math and stats in that middle part of the paper, which gets a little heavy. What are the main findings from the model-free evidence? There's two. First effect is that on average, they don't find any effect on posting activity. So they see that in the control group, which is the people who they didn't throw new followers themselves, they find that 34% of that 1,255 people had a greater posting rate after the intervention started on the other guys. For the treatment group, for those 100 people who I gave 100 new followers, they find that about 41% of users had a higher posting rate after the intervention started. So if we take the difference between those two numbers, it's about 6%. They tell you that 6% difference in the amount of posting is not statistically significant. So just by comparing the average behavior between the two groups, they're not able to say a lot about whether there's kind of image concerns or intrinsic utility driving the posting behavior. What they are able to do, what they do next, is they say, okay, we don't find an effect on average, but maybe there's different effects for different types of people. So how do they kind of come up with these different types of people? What they do is they break users down into 5 groups based on the amount of followers they had at the beginning. So you have like high follower users, medium to high follower users, average follower users, down to like low follower users. And they then try and do that comparison between a treatment group who had low users at the beginning and the control group that had low users at the beginning, and see if they find differences. And they do that group by group. And that's what you see in table 4, which I've put on the screen, on this slide. What we see is essentially 2 significant effects that we're going to use to kind of come up with the main result. Let me highlight those for you because they can be a little hard to find. First effect that they find is in quintile 2. And what they do here, the statistically significant effect is this one that I've highlighted in blue. So these guys have relatively low number of followers, right? So they're not followed by a lot of people. And they show that for the people who don't have a lot of initial followers, when I give you an extra 100, you increase your daily posting rate. So once you get more followers and you didn't have many already, you post more often. They argue that this is an intrinsic utility effect, right? So for low follower users, there's intrinsic utility concerns present. The other statistically significant effect that we find in the paper, well, they find, because we didn't do the analysis, they did. Oopsie, is in quintile 4, which are the moderately highly followed people, right? So they're above average, but they're not they don't have the most followers of the people in their sample. So they're moderately highly followed. What they find here is that these guys, when they get the guys who are in the treatment group, let me be precise. For the guys who are in the treatment group that already have a relatively high number of followers and get thrown additional followers, extra 100, we find that there's a decrease in their posting rate. And that decrease in their posting is bigger than the decrease in posting by other users who weren't given those extra followers. So for these guys, these moderately popular guys, we see a decrease in their posting behavior compared to people who we didn't give those extra friends. They argue that that means that for these moderately highly popular people, moderately highly followed people, there is a image-related utility effect. Because I gave you those extra 100 people and you decreased your posting rate, they argue that that suggests for these guys, your posting behavior is driven mainly by image-related utility concerns. So you care about what people think of you, and because you have enough people following you, you get enough kind of happiness from that. You don't have to post more to attract new followers. You've already kind of got those friends given to you, in a sense. So putting those findings together is a little tricky, actually. But what you find is a 2-stage process. For people that have few followers, intrinsic utility dominates. So this idea that you gain happiness from just posting is that dominant effect. Like you're just happy that you're kind of sharing information with the world and broadcasting information. Once you have enough followers, though, that broadcasting effect goes away and image-related utility dominates. And you now become worried about how people think of you. So instead of just broadcasting new information, you're posting maybe less because you're happy that people are already following you and that makes you happy. And you're probably also worried about how people are going to perceive the posts you're going to make. So maybe you're a bit more careful in what you're curating and you're putting online. So your posting rate declines. There's, I guess, two main implications that are kind of relevant for us as kind of marketing analysts, marketing managers out of these findings. First is that your best brand advocate, therefore, is not always going to be users that have a large follower account. Because people with a large follower account have image-related utility concerns that kind of outweigh just broadcasting ideas. Okay. So maybe your high follower guys are not going to be your best brand advocates. And instead you want to think about kind of people with smaller follower accounts. This is interesting, I think, because if you think about the conversation around influencers, that's kind of current in marketing, particularly in applied kind of like marketing in the real world. There's really this idea that influencers matter and how do we find influencers to generate us content. I think what we see, or at least what I see from what I read from the real world, is that people have started to realize that these really high followed accounts might not be their best influencers, might not be the best influencers for a lot of products. And instead, it is people, like what people call micro or nano influencers, that really generate a lot of value for a company. And I think this kind of image versus intrinsic utility idea here kind of, in a sense, spells out why that might be the case, right? These nano or micro influencers might matter because they're the ones who are more happy to just broadcast information and tell you what they think. They don't have kind of these image-related concerns where they're going to be a little careful on how they curate information. We might come back to this idea when we talk about influencers in a few weeks' time. So I think this is really interesting. The second takeaway that is potentially managerially relevant here is that as a social media platform matures and becomes more, and it becomes larger, and then as the platform itself becomes larger, potentially the users themselves start to build up larger follower bases, they suggest that maybe then image-related utility might start to dominate for a lot of users. So you're not going to see potentially as much of this broadcasting and kind of opinion kind of idea being thrown out by consumers on your platform. And then, so therefore they argue that, for mature social media platforms as a marketer, the way you might want to broadcast your ideas, sorry, not broadcast your ideas, but broadcast your products, your content to consumers might be through you posting as a firm onto social media itself and then having consumers view your content. So what they kind of predict is on social media, on kind of mature social media platforms, that firm generated content as opposed to user generated content might become the main way, or at least an alternative way, to broadcast information to consumers, because consumers are going to stop broadcasting to each other because image related utility concerns are going to start to kick in for a lot of people. That's quite a different take on what social media could be on a mature platform than an idea that all social media platforms might be like a social listening idea, where I, as a marketing company, I'm using social media to to learn kind of consumer perceptions, consumer reviews about my product. So that's interesting, I think. This idea that mature social media platforms might become more of an advertising platform where firms are posting content rather than a place where users are talking to each other about stuff. And I think in a way, we can see a little bit of that on some of the more mature places like Facebook or Twitter. I think we are seeing a lot more firm-generated content coming out there. They're posting stuff themselves as a way of broadcasting information to consumers, instead of this pure consumer to consumer user-generated content story.